am recovered from the Every Bit Counts challenge and I decided to do some canning. My husband mentioned making meals in a jar, so I'm going to do a lot of those. I have 6 pounds of lamb because I found an Indian like curry dish in a jar. Lamb vindaloo. So we're going to try that with a bunch of lamb. I'm having another lamb processed pretty soon in October, so I've got to get through some of these chops in particular. So I have chops and a leg of lamb making 6 pounds. I also have 4 pounds of elk that I found in the freezer. I didn't know we still had elk, so I'm going to make sloppy joes in a jar. And then I have some moose roast and I'm going to make pot roast in a jar. I'm doubling this recipe, so this is 4 pounds of elk, probably a little bit over, but oh, I guess it would help to turn on the heat. That's how you cook things, with heat. Okay, so we're gonna brown this. Before it's completely brown, I'm gonna add the vegetables and I'll get back to you. I'm gonna call that a cup. That a cup. And some to grow on. And then 3/4 of a cup of bell pepper. So 1.5. Okay. That's probably 1. Yeah, 1.5. That's 1.5-ish. Since these are frozen, they're homegrown and I just keep them chopped and frozen in the freezer. That should thaw that and then start to cook it. Okay, I just drained the grease. The blog I normally don't read, but I just happened to see that he said it tastes a lot like manwich, except it was a little sweeter. So he said, so maybe try less. I'm using dark brown sugar. You're supposed to use 2 tablespoons, so 4 in my case. I'm gonna use 3, I think. 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. 1, 2, 3, 4. It calls for that Heinz chili sauce, and we don't have any, so I'm using this. 3 tablespoons of that. Oh my. Ooh! I mean, it looks like that chili stuff. Because it is. It's chili. 1. 2. 3. 6. And I did a little bit more because he also says it could use some spicy Worcestershire sauce. So 6 of these suckers. 6. I hope I counted right. Okay. It also says 2 teaspoons of yellow mustard, but we don't keep mustard because it's gross. So I have dried. So I'm just gonna kind of put some in here. You know, that's probably good, maybe. Okay, 1/4 cup of water, doubled is half. And let me check to make sure I did everything. Water, mustard, Worcestershire chili sauce. No, I didn't. I need 3 cups of ketchup. We're gonna need more ketchup. Okay. And now we stir. Alright. Looks pretty sloppy joey. You know what? I want to taste it. It doesn't have a lot of spice, but it's sweet. I mean, manwich is sweet. It's good. It does taste like a manwich. My big ladle. I'm gonna fill this to an inch headspace, and then put the lids on. And in the blog, the guy mentions that it's hard to fit more than half a cup of meat mixture on a bun. So remember that when you're trying to decide pints or quarts. I mean, for me and my husband, that's plenty. Here I thought this was gonna make 12. It made 7. I just debubbled with a chopstick just to get any air bubbles I could out. Wipe the rim. Put this on. Put that on. There it is. I'm doubling this recipe so I can make 4 quart jars. Here I washed, peeled, and chopped 4 carrots and 4 ribs of celery. I've got my garlic I need to slice, 4 cloves. And then my onions here, I need 2 cups of onions. The recipe calls for potatoes too, but I didn't have any fresh, so when I make it, I'll just open some canned potatoes. This is 4 pounds of moose. Use whatever meat you'd like. I cut it into 1-inch cubes. All my meat's been cut, and I have my vegetables out here. I'm going to evenly distribute that through the quart jars. I'm going to season it here. 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 4 teaspoons of salt, 4 bay leaves, 2 teaspoons dried thyme, and then you can add a cup of dry red wine, but we don't like the taste of red wine. And then you add water to fill to 1-inch headspace. After that was all seasoned and mixed up, I evenly distributed the meat into each of the quart jars. And I'm so glad I didn't put potatoes in here because I wanted more meat. And now the same thing with each of the vegetables. I was real careful with the garlic to make sure none of the jars had more than they really needed. It's so pretty. And then of course water, maintaining a 1-inch headspace, and then you need to debubble pretty well because that raw meat's going to trap a lot of air in there. After you clean the rim of the jar and put the lid on, it's going to go in the pressure canner for 90 minutes for quart jars and 75 minutes for pint jars. I was in the grocery store yesterday buying apples for the pigs, and I thought apple cider would be nice because it's actually fall, because it's in the 80s. Real quick before we leave, I'm going to get these apples washed and quartered and put them in the crock pot with some cinnamon and allspice. I'm going to wait on the sugar to see how it tastes and then get it cooking while we're gone. I got Granny Smith because I wanted the tartness, but I also got Gala apples because of the sweetness. So hopefully they'll even each other out. The recipe I was looking at was allrecipes.com, and it said to use ground cinnamon and allspice, but I have it whole too, so I'd rather do that. These are allspice berries we've used a lot. Here's what they look like, whole. It's a tablespoon of ground, so, you know, just, it probably won't be bad. A tablespoon of cinnamon sticks, I'm just going to use 2. I'm kind of freely adapting the allrecipes.com recipe. I just filled it near the top with water, no exact measurement here. Oh, you gotta plug it in first, because it doesn't work without electricity. And those apples cooked on low for about 4 hours, after which I ladled it through a strainer into a pitcher. I wanted all that cider goodness into my pitcher, so I even put all the peelings and the mashed up apples in there and let it strain through. If I had to do this over again, I would concentrate the apple flavor by cooking it down more or adding more apples. I also added a teaspoon probably of brown sugar to this. I think it needed the molasses and a little more sugar. It just overall kind of tasted watered down, so I'd put more apple in it. This recipe has all ground spices, but it wants you to toast them in oil, so I think it's more of making a paste. You start out with 1 to 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of ground cumin, 2 tablespoons ground coriander seed, 2 tablespoons of garam masala, 2 tablespoons of ground ginger, 2 tablespoons of ground mustard seed, and 1 tablespoon of ground turmeric. Not done yet though. 3 teaspoons of salt. And then you can add cayenne pepper to taste. It's optional. I left it out because I put the 2 full tablespoons of chili powder in there and my husband doesn't like things extra spicy. Then to your warm pan, add 1/4 cup of whatever oil you want to. Just make sure it's a neutral flavor. They suggest coconut oil, but I didn't have any, so I used avocado oil. Then you put the spice mix in there and toast that for 1 to 2 minutes. This is when you add your 6 pounds of lambs that you've chopped into 1-inch cubes, and you brown it on all sides. The recipe suggests that if it doesn't all fit in your pan or it's a tight fit like this, that you do 2 batches, but I didn't want to wait that long. After it's all mixed together, it's kind of hard to tell if it's just the spice mix color or if it's browned. But either way, it's going to get cooked in the canning process, so I wasn't too worried about it. This ended up filling 5 pint jars, and then we had some for dinner that I didn't can. The leftover paste that was in the pan, I put equally in the jars that I was canning. After those jars are filled to 1-inch headspace, take 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar and put that equally in each of the jars. Since I kept some for dinner, I put some in the pot as well. And then with 2 cups of broth or water, you fill to 1-inch headspace. I needed a little bit more, I think, if I'm not mistaken, but I added some to the dinner pot as well. As always, you want to debubble, and then because lamb is pretty greasy, you want to make sure and use vinegar to wipe the rims before you put your lids on. These are going to process for 75 minutes for pints and 90 minutes for quart jars. These were pretty good, not spicy at all. We served it over rice and we both enjoyed it. And as always, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I upload most Sundays and you can keep watching us grow our farm. Have a good one. What's the score of the Cowboys game? Not good. This is a lie. It was 91 degrees today.